Good afternoon and welcome, and thank you for joining us here in the Farish Theater in the Lexington Public Library. To those of you listening or viewing at home, my name is Tammy Fagley, and I'm joined by Shayla Lynch. We're both members of the League of Women Voters, and we're going to be your moderators for today's forum. This forum is for the Circuit Court Family Judge Division I primary, and it is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Lexington, as well as the Lexington Public Library and the Frankfort Lexington chapter of the Links Incorporated. This forum is being videotaped and will be available for later viewing. Check the library and league websites for schedules and the links. We are following the League of Women Voters policies and procedures for this forum. We have randomly drawn for the order of opening remarks and questions, and we'll use the same order for closing. Well, we've drawn again for closing remarks. The candidates will each have 90 seconds to introduce themselves, 90 seconds to respond to questions, and then 90 seconds for closing remarks. Today's candidates in order of drawing are, we have Libby Messer, Gregory Napier, Eillen O'Brien, and then Nguyen. And Shayla, if you go ahead and ask our first question.
All right, we're going to start off with opening remarks, and as Tammy said, you will have 90 seconds to do so, so we'll start with Ms. Messer.
Thank you. I'd like to start by thanking the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and to all of you for being here. I appreciate that you're all engaged in the process and whatever brought you out today, and are interested in learning more about your candidates. As they said, I am Judge Libby Messer. I'm your current Fayette Circuit Court Family Court Judge in the First Division. I am the proud mother of 3 wonderful children. They are my inspiration for what I do. I've dedicated my career to public service. Prior to taking the bench, I was a prosecutor at the Fayette County Attorney's Office, where I specialized in juvenile criminal cases and prosecuting child abuse and neglect cases in family court. I'm passionate about protecting children and serving families. I'm currently the only family court judge and the only candidate with this unique background and this public service background. I believe the local Judicial Nominating Commission, as well as the Governor's Selection Committee, recognize the uniqueness of this background and the need for it to be on the Fayette County Family Court bench. I believe and have confirmed through my first several months on the bench that my background is beneficial in all walks of family court, and I use it daily, whether it's a divorce docket or a dependency, neglect, and abuse docket. I'm excited to share more about my background and how that influences my decisions as a judge, and why I'm the best candidate to keep this position as your Fayette Family Court Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Napier.
Yes, I'm grateful for the chance just to let you all know who I am. Family court is a court that touches everybody's life, either directly, perhaps you'll be in front of a family court judge, but if you're not, at least someone you love is going to be there. Hopefully it'll be for something great, like an adoption. However, you really want the person sitting there in that bench to have the broadest range of experience. Family court is an odd court in the sense that it's one part application of law, one part quasi-parent, one part social work. I have practiced, Judge Messer and I went to law school together. I graduated a year before her, and I've practiced family law since then. But what sets me apart is the experience prior to law school. I worked as a counselor to drug rehab. I worked my way through family sciences undergraduate. I was a counselor for troubled youth and their families, for comp care for a number of years, service coordinator, also with comp care for a number of years, and I worked as a child protection social worker, supervised a team that handled child protection issues, foster care issues, as well as domestic violence. And I am the proud father of 3 girls, the oldest of which is 22 and going to Kenya this summer. So, thank you.
Ms. O'Brien.
Thank you. I, too, would like to thank the League for sponsoring this event. The League's mission is especially valuable in races like this. We're competing for attention, and even though the judicial race may be down on the ballot, it's an extremely important race. If you're a family in trouble, and we know these days about half of all marriages are going to end in divorce, then family court is where you have to go to negotiate the end of that breakup. It's where the fate of children are decided, child support, visitation, health care, the works. Family court is also where the rights of the adults are decided, where assets and liabilities are distributed, and where the terms of any future obligations are decided. The families who come into family court are often living at the quick of their feelings, and they're often very innocent and naive about the court process. The judge they wind up with there should have a wealth of experience in dealing with family law cases. I've been advocating for families in family court cases for 35 years. The judge should also recognize when marital issues can be worked out, including the potential for reconciliation itself, without rancor. It helps if the judge has been trained as a mediator, is experienced in serving as a mediator, and has participated in mediations, as I have. I'm proud of my record of giving in the community, and I think I'm ready by training, experience, and temperament to be your family court judge.
Thank you. And Mr. Nguyen?
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I would also like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, for each of you for coming out today to learn about family court. My name is Nguyen, and my story is uniquely American. My father came to America as a refugee after serving as a helicopter pilot in the South Vietnamese Air Force, assisting the United States in the Vietnam War. He found sponsorship with a family in Evansville, Indiana, where he met my mother. I am a graduate of Lexington Catholic, UK, and the UK College of Law. My wife, Misty, who serves as a guardian ad litem attorney representing children, and I are the proud parents of 2 children who are 2 years old and 3 months old. I'm grateful for the opportunities this country has given me and my family. I want to pay forward the opportunities my family has been given by serving as family court judge. I have advocated for countless clients for nearly a decade in all areas of family law, including adoption, abuse and neglect, domestic violence, divorce, and custody. I've represented men and women, mothers and fathers, in every division of family court. I have the experience to be family court judge. My experience as a family law attorney gives me a special sensitivity to families in distress that will allow me to serve compassionately as family court judge. I understand the difficult times that families face when they're in family court, particularly when there are children involved. I will ensure that the children's best interests are served. I believe that every voice in every family will be heard, should be heard. I will ensure that each person has access to the law, regardless of gender, race, sexual orientation, or background. Thank you.
And now we will start with our questions, and we will begin with Mr. Napier, who drew as number 2. Everyone, again, will have 90 seconds to answer, and we'll get to answer the same question, so you all have the opportunity to answer. And our first question that has been generated by either the League of Women Voters or members from our audience is this: why do you want to serve as a family court judge? Beginning with Mr. Napier. Why do you want to serve?
Certainly. This, just like I shared at the very beginning with my introduction, my whole career, and that spanned over 30 years as well, has been geared towards serving families, building families, strengthening families, and this feels like, and I sense this being a culmination of that. I really see that there are some areas where a family court judge can make a positive impact on the community, on the children. And I've actually been really excited during my campaigning to meet a lot of community leaders, to talk with them, to hear from them, pastors, different churches, Humanities Council, other leaders, social workers in the community, and hear from them the struggles that people are facing and actually begin to understand on a deeper level how that family court judge can make a difference in those lives. Everything's been geared towards serving my whole life. Everything's been geared towards building families, and I think this is a unique place to be able to continue that work.
Thank you. Ms. O'Brien, the same question. Why do you want to serve as a family court judge?
I started off with my contact with the Fayette Circuit Court when I started college going to Transylvania, and I served as a clerk for what were then our 6 judges. And for the next 7 years, halfway through law school before I left, I watched firsthand what an enormous impact those judges had on the individuals who came in front of them. I then spent my professional career building up the experience, standing with men, women, and children who were in that courtroom in front of a judge, dealing with some of the most important and personal issues they'd ever have to address. And I felt that at the end of that time, I had built up the experience and the knowledge of what those people were experiencing, what was important to them, what was frightening to them, what were their biggest fears when they walked into a courtroom to deal with those personal issues. And I was raised by the wonderful people in my law firm to believe in service, particularly service to the bar and to the community. So it was my hope that I could put that wealth of experience to work as a family court judge and make a positive difference to the people who would come into that court.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen, the same question. Why do you want to serve as family court judge?
Thank you. I think it can be very simply summarized in my slogan and what I've been telling people and what I've been running on, for every voice in every family. I'll ensure that everybody feels like they're heard in family court. When people walk out of family court, probably their biggest grievance is that they feel like they haven't been heard. My background gives me a special insight and sensitivity to that particular grievance because I also am an underrepresented and even unrepresented group at the state court level here in Kentucky. There's not a single Asian American judge on the bench currently serving in Kentucky. So it should be time to change that. But that gives me a special insight into really hearing people and to hearing their voices and to ensuring that their voices are heard in family court, because ultimately that's what people want in family court. They want their voices to be heard.
Thank you. And Ms. Messer, the same question. Why do you want to serve as family court judge?
Similar to some of the others at the table, my desire to be a family court judge stems back to very early in law school. I had the benefit of interning with one of our first family court judges and saw just how this court touched everybody in the community, and that the issues that they saw and they dealt with had huge impacts, not only on the individual families, but on the community as a whole because of that. I have dedicated my career to public service because of that. I went to work at the county attorney's office to specialize in child abuse and neglect cases in family court to help protect and serve children so that I could continue to learn and grow within the family court system on how to better serve our community. I was asked through that position to serve on many boards and task force with the breadth of different things, everything from the Violent Crimes and Juvenile Gang Intervention Task Force to the best practices for family court and truancy intervention. Anything having to do with a child or a family in this county, I probably sat on a board or a commission dealing with it. And through that, I learned that the issues in family court, while private and personal to the individual parties, they are issues of public health and safety. How things go in family court and how things go for our families impacts how things go for our community. I truly believe that strong families build strong communities, and that safe, supported, educated children lead to safer communities and more healthy communities. And I want to continue to serve that end as a family court judge.
Thank you. And for our next question, we're going to begin with the candidate that drew number 3, Ms. O'Brien. And here's our next question. Do you think experience is important to be a successful family court judge?
I think experience, and what I'm hearing from our citizens, is probably the most important quality that a family court judge can have. Part of what I've seen over the years that I've practiced and represented people is how the area in family law has developed. And it is now an enormously complex area of practice. It involves not only issues dealing with child support and child custody, which sometimes involve mental health professionals and assessments. It's also involving complex financial issues which impact people's future security, the division of pension and retirement assets. And now we're trying to cope with some of the complex issues, including constitutional issues, that have been generated by the opioid crisis. We have parents who may want to be parents, but because of their addiction are no longer behaving as fit custodians of their children. We have grandparents who for the first time are finding themselves raising their grandchildren. And the complexities that come with figuring out those legal rights and the appropriate terms of custody and the services that could be available to help alleviate some of those crisis situations, I think requires a depth of experience that only comes with years.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen.
I agree with Ms. O'Brien. Experience is absolutely vital to the position of family court judge, and a family court judge needs to have a broad experience in every facet of family court. I've advocated for clients in uncontested divorce and custody cases to the most contested divorce and custody cases. I've represented clients in western Kentucky as far as Union County, all the way to eastern Kentucky as far as Pike County. I've represented parties in very complicated property divisions. So you need a broad array of experiences to be a successful family court judge, and I've certainly had that experience as a family law practitioner.
Thank you. Same question, Ms. Messer. Do you think experience is important to be a successful family court judge?
I think experience is important to be successful in any career path, obviously. But I think when you're dealing with family court, you're dealing with such a broad array of issues that it's important to have experience that lets you be aware of how all the parts fit together and how everything works together for a family. And what we deal with in family court is not just issues of child custody, they're not just issues of divorces. We deal with everything. In a single day, I may have a case with an abused child whose parents can't scrape together enough money to drug test, and then turn around and have to deal with a family who has $1 million in assets that they're trying to distribute. So I think having someone who understands the broad array of what we deal with and can address those issues appropriately is important. At this point also, I'm now having the experience of being the judge and seeing just what you have to do on a daily basis and how you have to be open to finding practical solutions to difficult problems, and you have to be able to shift gears on a dime. You have to be able to manage a docket, manage difficult clients, manage difficult cases. And so at this point, I feel like my experience has not only prepared, my past experience has not only prepared me for this position, but my current experience as the judge is giving me a wealth of new knowledge and information that I will continue to learn from and carry forward.
Thank you. And Mr. Napier, the same question. Do you think experience is important to be a successful family court judge?
I think it's wonderful when politicians can agree on something. And what I've heard, I agree with Ms. O'Brien. There is some value in years of experience. And Ms. O'Brien and I run neck to neck in years in terms of age and experience. The difference is breadth of experience, or, Ms. O'Brien certainly has more in terms of family law and divorces. Mine extends out into experiences directly dealing with substance abuse treatment, families in crisis. So to that extent, I agree with Mr. Nguyen. There's a breadth of experience that is crucial. And basically what you're doing with all this is you're creating a storehouse of wisdom, a storehouse of experience that when you're sitting there as a family court judge, you can draw upon. And I'll give you an example of that. One of the most common standards that a judge has to apply when they're making a decision about a child in family court is best interest. What is the best interest of a child? That is informed. How one defines that and understands that is informed by experiences. And so yes, experience is absolutely crucial.
Thank you. For our next question, we'll begin with you, Mr. Nguyen. How would you separate your personal beliefs from your duties as a family court judge, or would you separate them?
I would absolutely separate them. A good judge has to follow what the statute mandates. To go back to Mr. Napier's point in the last question, the custody statute requires a judge to determine the best interest of the child. And there are certain statutory factors that are enumerated in our law, and we have to follow those. We cannot let personal beliefs or opinions dictate how we decide cases on the bench. So, no, I would not let my personal beliefs or personal opinions influence at any point how I decide cases as a family court judge.
Thank you. Ms. Messer, the same question. How would you separate your personal beliefs from your duties as a family court judge, or would you separate them?
I would separate my personal beliefs from my duties as a family court judge the way that I always have as a practicing attorney, as a practicing prosecutor. As judge, you take an oath to swear to uphold the law as it is, and I took that oath, and I take that oath very, very seriously. My approach to cases is looking at them holistically and not coming in with any preconceived notions or preconceived ways in which I'm going to deal with it, but rather looking back and looking at all the facts and information and then applying the law as it's written today fairly and justly to come to the fair, equitable, and just solution that is best for the child, that is best for the family, and that best serves not only the written language of the law, but the intent of the law. In family court, our statutes and our case law is relatively straightforward, and we have to apply that. Obviously, everything that you do is influenced by your personal beliefs, but I take very seriously my oath to uphold the law, to follow the law, and to work towards just and equitable solutions within the court, no matter how that may impact my personal beliefs.
Thank you. Mr. Napier, the same question. How would you separate your personal beliefs from your duties as family court judge, or would you separate them?
Well, the nice thing is that I don't need to separate my personal beliefs. My personal beliefs call upon me to uphold the laws of the land. And I very much believe in the rule of law, that a judge doesn't legislate from the bench, that a judge looks at the law and interprets that to the closest extent they can as to how the legislature intended it. My personal belief also calls me to see the people that come in front of me with absolute equality. The rich person, the poor person, the drug addict, the pious person, teetotaler, absolute equality, that I see them that way, whether they're gay, straight, whatever. So my personal belief calls me to do that. My personal belief calls me to extend care, compassion, love, and also firmness to everybody that comes in front of me. So, no, those personal beliefs run hand in hand, and they jive with the law and with the role of family court. My personal beliefs also call me to live in a with a great deal of integrity, to practice with a great deal of integrity, to be a judge with a great deal of integrity. And also, my personal beliefs are a source of strength that I can call upon. Being a family court judge, being a family lawyer exposes one to very difficult things. And so my personal beliefs are a source of strength to handle that.
Thank you. And Ms. O'Brien, the same question. How would you separate your personal beliefs from your duties as family court judge, or would you separate them?
Judge Messer is correct. Any judge takes an oath to apply the law and not to make the law or to make policy. But the place where I think a family court judge has the critical role is in assessing the facts that are brought into that courtroom to which the law has to be applied. I think my personal beliefs have been shaped by the hundreds of people that I've represented over the last 35 years, having watched their struggles and learned from them about those in the community who have had different life experiences than I have. who are concerned about things that don't directly touch on me. And I think that has given me the ability, because of my personal belief system, to be open to what other people are experiencing, and to be able to be completely impartial in the way I've listened to them and tried to apply the law to them in the fairest and most compassionate way possible.
Thank you. All right, we'll go back to you, Ms. Messer, for our next question. Are there any changes that you would like to see from a family court judge?
At this point, I don't really think of any changes that I would like to see. I think that there are some areas where clarity could be more useful, but I can't think of any statute or law that I think needs to be changed. I think we have a recent law that just went into effect that has some broad impact on the family court system and the way we're going to handle things like child custody, and in short order and as far as temporary orders go. But I think when you deal with family court, the overarching standard is the best interest of the child and the fairness and equality to the parties. And I think, unlike some other areas of law, that gives us a pretty broad range of discretion, a pretty wide open way to view cases and work towards the best solution for everyone involved. Our statutes are not overly specific in that area, and they allow for some broad discretion, which I think is good when you're dealing with family court, because no two families are alike, just like no two children are alike. And so cookie cutter approaches or specific ways of dealing with families would not be conducive to dealing with the broad array of issues and the broad types of families and people you deal with in family court. So I appreciate the way that our current statutes and laws are written. There's a few things being tried in other jurisdictions as part of specialty courts that I would love to see come to Fayette County, but at this point, with regard to law, I would say no.
Mr. Napier, the same question. Are there any changes you would like to see from a family court judge?
Yes, actually, there's a lot. I need more than 90 seconds. One thing right now, a barrier. I serve as a guardian ad litem and a court-appointed attorney in neglect and abuse cases here in Fayette County, Scott County. I've also served briefly in Bourbon, Woodford, and Jessamine County, and I see a lot of difference. One of those things that I see in other counties that we don't see quite here, the other counties are slower to remove kids, quicker to get them back home. I'd like to see how we might be able to do that here, because they are able to do it safely there as well. I would love to see the courts be more accepting of relative placements of children, even when there might be a strike against that person in their history. I just dealt with a case where a young girl, her rights were terminated from her parents, and one of the crucial things that happened was that the relative that wanted to take that person had one strike against her from 15 years prior, and that one strike kept her from being able to grow up with her family. I'd love to see that kind of change. I'd love to build community resources. We don't have enough resources. Sunflower Kids, a visitation center, just closed recently. We need to build up community resources to fill gaps like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Brien. Are there any changes that you would like to see from a family court judge?
I would agree with Mr. Napier on some of those outside services, and I think I'd take it a step further. One of the real limitations that a family court judge has, and I've explained to my clients, is that when you come into that courtroom, that judge gets just a snapshot of what's going on with that person or that family. And the more reliable information and data we can bring into the courtroom, and particularly to the judge's attention, the better decision that judge will make. Over the last 30 years, I have seen several services that we've had in general jurisdiction court and then in family court when it was implemented, particularly things like the friend of the court, who might be able to do those low to no cost investigations into a family's circumstances. in a very neutral and abstract way that would give the judge good information, reliable information that isn't tainted by anyone with an interest in the outcome. I'd also love to see us drastically expand the mediation services we have available in family court. We are very fortunate to have mediation services during our motion hours, which helps tremendously. But if we could expand those services, I think we could cut down greatly on a lot of the contested matters and reach more amicable resolutions.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen, the same question. Are there any changes that you would like to see from a family court judge?
Yeah, just a couple which I think are tied hand in hand, and it's part of a docket management issue. When I first got out of law school, I was fortunate enough to clerk for a general jurisdiction circuit court judge that handled 4 counties. And his practice was to get cases resolved as quickly as possible. And I would bring that to the family courts. I strongly believe that cases should be resolved as quickly as possible. It's not uncommon for cases to be submitted and then languish for weeks or months, or a couple instances even years. So one change that needs to be made to the family courts is getting cases resolved quicker. And that's certainly something that I would want to improve upon. Another thing is access to the courts to ensure that everybody feels comfortable coming to court. I've known at least one domestic violence victim that just gave up pursuing a domestic violence order because her case got pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. So it's very important that everybody feels like they have equal access to the courts, regardless of their circumstance.
All right, thank you. And we have time for one more question, and we'll begin with you, Mr. Napier. What qualifications and characteristics make you the best choice for family court judge, and that also sets you apart from the other candidates?
Well, at the risk of repeating myself, I believe that the extra legal experience that I have is the one thing that really sets me apart. I am the only person here who has been a counselor in a drug rehab, who has helped people directly face-to-face through that struggle. I'm the only person here who has gone into households and dealt with some of the chaos that can happen when a family starts to disintegrate. I remember one family that I dealt with in Powell County. I was in the home, and the 12-year-old boy that I was working with actually got up on a counter and got a loaded gun out of the shelves, and had to deal with that. I know how painful some of these things can be. I'm the only one here who's raised a child all the way to adulthood. Now, does that make someone a good judge? No, not by itself. However, it does give a unique perspective and informs decisions. I have also been trained as a mediator. I've done mediation, family law mediation. I'm also in the process of being trained as a different kind of mediator through alliance peacemaking. But all that experience outside of the legal realm, coupled with over a decade of broad family law experience, makes me unique.
Thank you. Ms. O'Brien, what qualifications and characteristics make you the best choice for family court judge, and that also sets you apart from your other candidates?
I do believe that I have the most experience in the actual practice of family law. I think 35 years of representing individuals and children in every single matter that could come before a family court judge is a very distinguishing characteristic for me. I would disagree that as a practitioner I have not gone into homes and seen exactly what's going on, because I think that's what you have to do when you advocate for people. At the same time, for 30 of the 35 years that I've practiced, I have also been deeply involved with Chrysalis House, which is a residential treatment program for women and their children who are recovering from drug and alcohol addiction. And I did that because I'm very interested in issues pertaining to women and children in poverty, particularly as affected by addiction. I've served for 3 terms as the president of that organization. I've seen it expand from a small renovated fraternity house to a 5-property facility, which we now include permanent housing because we have found that once families are reunited, they need a safe drug and alcohol-free place to be. I think the combination of the community service and the practical representation set me apart. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Nguyen, what qualifications and characteristics make you the best choice for family court judge, and that also sets you apart from the other candidates?
I've had a broad array of experience in family law. In my practice, I've practiced every area of family law, but what sets me apart most of all is just who I am, my personal background. When people feel like they're not having a voice in court or they feel like they're underrepresented, I'm one of those underrepresented groups. So that gives me a little bit more insight into how people feel. I had a client recently that was going through an adoption case. He's the father, and his wife was adopting his child, and he was terrified of speaking in court. And there was absolutely no reason why he should be terrified. That was not a case against him at all. He was in the best possible posture, but I recognized his fear of just speaking to the judge, and I understood it. And that's what sets me apart from the other candidates. I recognize and appreciate. I want to give everybody a voice in court.
Thank you. Ms. Messer, the same question. What qualifications and characteristics make you the best choice for family court judge, and that also sets you apart from the other candidates?
I think it stands to note that at least 3 of the 4 of us up here today all went through the same process in attempting to become the family court judge. We went through the nomination process where we were interviewed by a local committee about our background, our experience, interviewed extensively, and 2 of us, Ms. O'Brien and myself, came out of that with nominations to possibly be selected for this position. From there, we went through another round of scrutiny at the state level with another round of attorneys who reviewed our backgrounds, interviewed us, asked us lots of tough questions similar to those that we were being asked today. And out of that, I was selected to be the family court judge and was appointed by our governor. And I think what set me apart in that process and continues to set me apart is my dedication to public service and my dedication to serving children, to protecting children, and to helping families move forward through times of crisis and times of difficulty. Much like what other candidates have spoken to, as the prosecutor in neglect and abuse cases, I absolutely know what's going on in these homes. I absolutely saw daily what is happening with the opioid crisis. I've seen what happens to children in domestic violence homes. I've worked to combat those issues, and I've seen how all of that goes into affecting a family. I'm compassionate with families and helping them heal and move forward from those things, and I dedicate myself and my career to helping people move forward and to find good solutions. I know the different agencies out there to help and have worked closely hand in hand with them for nearly a decade and will continue to do so as a judge.
Thank you. And now we will enter into our closing remarks, and we drew for those, and Ms. O'Brien drew first.
Thank you. I think the theme here is that experience is critical in this particular job, and I think that comes on 2 levels. What has your candidate done as a lawyer, and what has your candidate done for the community? As a lawyer, I've been a high-level litigator. I have handled some extremely difficult cases and gotten some extremely good results for my clients, and I've developed expertise both in the law and in procedure. I've been involved at the appellate level. I've gotten some very good appellate decisions for my clients, which have become accepted legal principle over time. Most recently, making the award of child support for economically vulnerable custodial parents easier to achieve. I think I have been generous with the pro bono services. I also not only represent clients on a pro bono basis, but I serve on the Fayette County Pro Bono Board in an effort to bring those legal services to others who can't afford them. And for the community, I think that causes such as Chrysali's House, which helps people deal with the scourge of addiction, is significant. I've donated time and served on the board and as president of the Carnegie Center because it has a literacy program and also helps families. And I believe that that combination of community service and legal expertise makes me the best candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Messer?
Thank you all again for having me. Today I've talked a lot about my background as a child abuse and neglect prosecutor and how that has shaped my approach to the issues that face our families. I believe that the Fayette County Judicial Nominating Commission and the Governor's Selection Committee saw my unique background and my dedication to public service, my dedication to this community, my dedication to children, and that is why they selected me to be the family court judge. I'm the only candidate up here today that has a dedicated track record of my entire career being dedicated to public service. I too have served on numerous boards and commissions with various agencies addressing child abuse, addressing child custody, I was on the CASA board making sure that children have an active voice in the courtroom as well. This has all shaped my approach to being the judge. I'm now the only candidate up here who has actually been a family court judge and continue to be a family court judge. I understand what it's like to be on the other side of the bench. It's not as easy as I thought it was going to be, but I work every day to strive to become better, to take what I have learned in my past to be the best judge I can possibly be, to find fair and equitable solutions for families that help them heal, that help them move forward, and do so safely. I'm dedicated to applying the law fairly and consistently to everyone that comes before me, ensuring that everyone who appears in my courtroom does have a voice and does feel listened to. I'm dedicated to fair and practical solutions for families in transition, and I'm dedicated to finding solutions that keep children safe and keep our community safe. And therefore, I hope to get your consideration to stay as your family court judge.
Thank you. Mr. Nguyen?
Again, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and for everyone coming here today to learn about family court. My name is Nguyen. I decided to run for a family court judge to be a voice for those who feel underrepresented and unrepresented. It's so important that everyone who comes to family court feels like their voice is heard, regardless of their gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or background. My background gives me a unique insight. I am one of those underrepresented and unrepresented classes. I am an Asian American in a state where there are no Asian Americans on our state bench at any level. It's time to change that. My name is Nguyen, and I'd appreciate your vote on May 22nd.
Thank you. And Mr. Napier?
I believe I've shared multiple times already the experience that I've got. I really hope people who want to know more about me, know my stance on different things, the ways I would like to see family court change. I would love for you to go to napierforjudge.org. I've been very vocal there about what I think and what I believe. Napier for Judge on Facebook, Instagram, you can find me and you can find all those things out. There is a couple things I want to stress, though, rather than repeat my experience. A couple things I didn't get a chance to touch on, I think, enough, one of which is building community resources. And I really think that we need to be open not only to resources that are a little non-traditional for family court as opposed to direct therapy or direct counseling, that kind of thing. Prime Time with Humanity Council is a great program that I've seen used with a prior family court judge that helped build families and build nurturing relationships. I'd love to build that kind of thing. I'd love to reach out to faith-based communities because they're eager to serve as well. And lastly, I really think that everybody does need to be heard. I want, as a family court judge, and this is a little controversial, I want every person that is coming before family court to actually, I want to lay eyes on them. I want to talk to them. I want to have a hearing in every divorce and every other circumstance. Thank you.
All right, let's give our candidates a round of applause for doing an excellent job.
Well done, Libby.
Thank you to the candidates for participating today, and thanks to our sponsors, the Lexington Public Library, the League of Women Voters, and the Frankfort Lexington chapter of the Links. You will be able to find more information about our candidates that are be on the primary ballot on the League of Women Voters online voter guide, which is Vote 411. That information will be available after May 3rd. Be sure to vote in the primary election on May 22nd, and we thank you all for joining us.